What's up? Hello, everybody. Happy Friday. We are recording this on a Friday. This show will be out on a Friday, or this Friday, ahead of Alabama's first fall scrimmage. Mike, Alex, how we doing this week? I know we already talked this week, but how we doing?
It's good to talk again. No, it's finally slowing down a little bit, because that first 5-6 days of fall camp were pretty rapid fire in terms of our availability and able to go watch practice and all that. And then it kind of tightens up. I mean, the middle of this week, they stopped letting us in the practice, which was the plan all along. It's not like it was a last minute change, but we only get one more practice viewing before the Florida State game. So it's kind of the typical, they go into their shell a little bit, as they prepare for the opener, and it's a little bit less training camp like. So we're past that first phase, and now we're 3 weeks from today is when they get on the plane and they fly down to Tallahassee. We get in our car and we drive down to Tallahassee. So unfortunately, we don't have a private jet here at Bama247.
No.
I've been to Tallahassee, I think, twice during the Florida TiVo days. So some good memories there being a fan. But yeah, we'll be here before we know it. We'll kind of get right into it. In today's show, we're going to kind of do a position by position breakdown. We'll kind of look ahead a little bit to the scrimmage as well. But I know kind of it's under wraps, like Mike said, that the scrimmage is going to be kind of very closed off. So we'll see what we can get from that. But we'll just go right into it. We're going to kind of do one word, or try to stick to one word to describe each position, how you're feeling kind of going in. We'll start with quarterback, obviously, and we'll start with Alex.
Is dunno a word? Like, I don't know.
That works.
I don't know. It's still, I think, we're going to find out a little bit more this weekend with a scrimmage. As I said on the last podcast, the defense they went against in the spring is not the defense they're facing now, with guys like Damani Jackson, Keon Sabb back. So very curious to see how the upgrade in competition, how they meet that sort of, and whether Ty can create some separation. Clearly, he is the guy right now, but he's got to get over that last mile of the race and hit the finish line. And can he do that? Or can we sort of continue to see Keelan Russell impress people with what he's done, the work during the summer, getting to this point, being an early enrollee, I think really helped him. And this is the time you should start to see him make major strides. So very curious to see how he does. And of course, Austin Mack as well. So it's kind of like a big question mark at this point. I don't know if I have a definitive word to put on it, just because we sort of know what to expect, but until we see it play out, I don't know.
Yeah.
I will go with the word imminent, just because it feels like this is the time. Like, this is when we're going to find out pretty soon. And part of finding out is finding out who the starter is. Now, I don't know if there's a ton of drama there. I think most people would expect Ty Simpson, but finding out in terms of what it's going to be is also imminent, because, like I said, they fly to Tallahassee 3 weeks from today, and you really need a starter named, announced to your team at least 1 week before that, but more likely a week plus to 2 weeks before that. So you're talking the next week, the next 8 to 9 days is really when this will be decided in terms of who starts week one. That includes the scrimmage Saturday, and that includes the scrimmage next Saturday. And again, after that, you're really in game week prep mode. So imminent is the word that comes to mind. And I do think you might see a similar, we'll have to see exactly how Kalen DeBoer handles it, but a similar vibe to when Nick Saban named a starter 2 years ago and basically said the competition continues. Like, you're not ever just ending competition on your team. And I think coaches like to say that there's always competition. Now, Kalen DeBoer, I think, is very careful with how he phrases things that way. And I think he doesn't like to put that sort of public pressure on players. So I would be curious, assuming that it's Ty, is he going to kind of point out that there's still a possibility that he's not the starter at some point? I don't know. Psychologically, I think he takes a different approach than Nick Saban on that, but functionally, I think that's still probably going to be true. And for everything I said in the last show, like, you have Keelan Russell in that row, and that's something you can't just forget about. So imminent is the word. We're going to find out pretty soon who the starter is, and then we're going to find out pretty soon on the field in Tallahassee how that starter performs.
Yeah, for what it's worth, I wrote down I've got a couple positions I want to include in, but that's one I just didn't even have. Don't know perfectly works. And real quick,
the timeline is a big part of this equation, because you want it to be clear, you want everybody to know, you want everybody to be on the same page with the starting quarterback, but the starting quarterback has to cooperate and separate himself to where that is clear. So if it's imminent, I think Alabama fans can feel good about that, can feel some hope that, hey, it only took a scrimmage, it only took 10 practices, whatever it took, and didn't take the entire way. But again, we'll see, because I've said it last week, I'll say it again. I'm not counting out Keelan Russell until I see Ty Simpson take the job and then go to Tallahassee and do something with it.
Well, I just first of all wanted to say I checked the Scrabble dictionary. In both the U.S. and the U.K., Dano is in the dictionary for Scrabble. So you got that one right. And I will say, I was thinking about this after we recorded the last show. Like, what's the NBC show with Howie Mandel? I've already forgotten about it. Let's make a deal. I feel like that's Ty Simpson right now. He's in that little briefcase.
Deal or no deal. That's what it is.
Deal or no deal. Yeah, that's what it is. Yeah. He's in that little briefcase, and like, you don't know what is in that briefcase. Like, it could be $1 million and you're trying to see if it is, or it could be $5 and you just don't know. And there's a value in opening the briefcase eventually and knowing, but you're also, once you know if it's $10, then you move on to your other briefcase, or you lost, or whatever the game is, or
there's a funny correlation in the era of NIL to make a deal or no deal thing, because that's real.
That's Ty Simpson in a nutshell. It's like, you just don't know what's inside that little briefcase right now, and you're trying to make plans and do evaluations and all this based on, you haven't opened it up yet and you don't know what it's going to look like.
The good thing, and this is something that Kalen DeVore said frequently, is that it's not as if there's a huge difference stylistically between the quarterbacks. There are subtle differences, but they sort of all operate the same way in terms of being guys who want to stand in the pocket and throw the football. So at least in that respect, as far as game planning, what you want to do receiver-wise, offensive line, running game-wise, there shouldn't be too much of a holdup in terms of if it does take longer for the quarterback situation to sort itself out.
And I will say, Ty, having kind of seen him up close more with the practice access we've had, he's not a big quarterback. And some of that's a little bit skewed with the guys that he's next to, Austin Mack and the walk-on, John Gazzaniga, who's 6'7". But Ty's not big. And, I mean, Jalen Milroe was always, I think, smaller in person than people kind of perceived him to be, but he was obviously very built. Ty's, the shortest one in that room, just kind of glancing at it when you're out there in the field. And I don't know, like, I'm just trying to think, like, if I was an NFL scout and I'm sitting here with very limited tape on Ty Simpson, I'm saying, like, what is this guy? Like, what are the key traits of Ty Simpson? I don't know. Like, is he fast? Is he big? Does he have a strong arm? Is he a good reader of defenses? I don't know what the answer is. And that's, I want to say, part of the problem for him, but like, at some point you need to show some of those traits. Like, why were you a borderline 5-star prospect? I think by the end you're a 4-star, on 247, but.
Well, and it's a good point you bring up the weight, because obviously that was a big talking point with Keelan Russell. And it's like, oh, he needs to put on the weight. And I'm in the camp that these kids that go to these Power 5 programs, and certainly Alabama, these weight staffs can get you to exactly what they want to be. And like, I was never really worried about, I'll ask you guys, like, seeing Keelan out there, are you, hey, he doesn't look ready physically? Because I mean, from pictures, it looks like,
he's fine.
Yeah, he's fine.
I
He's
saw
not
Jaden
Jalen
Russell.
Milroe.
I saw Jaden Daniels just light up the SEC, and he was a toothpick.
Right.
He's thicker than Jaden is at this point.
Absolutely.
Right. He doesn't look like a linebacker out there, but he has a little bit more length to him. He's 6'3". Like you can see, like he can kind of fill that out a little bit more. It just, I don't totally see that with Ty. He's an inch or two shorter than Keelan, and
Keelan is a better runner than people give him credit for. I know it has to translate to the college level.
Ty is too. Yeah,
correct, absolutely. So,
I don't know if Ty's speed is ever going to be like his key quality. If that is, like, he's probably in trouble.
Right, and what shouldn't be Keelan's either, and it won't be.
Mm-hmm.
So, and we'll move right along into kind of the running back. Another, I mean, Deneau could probably work again, but Mike, we'll start with you.
Yeah, I was thinking right before the show of some of these words, and the only word that can come to mind for me for the running backs is mediocre. And I don't care if Robert Gillespie plays this in his room and tries to fire up his room. I just don't think they were good enough last year. I don't think this was a classic Alabama running back room. I don't think it is right now. I would challenge those guys and say, look at what Jeremiah Love did at Notre Dame last year. Look at what Ohio State did with Judkins and Trevion Henderson. Look at what Ashton Genty did at Boise State. Why is that not Alabama? And it used to be, like Derrick Henry, Mark Ingram, etc. Why did it just feel off? And you can blame Jalen and the style of running and the option game. Like there's probably some amount of blame to go there, but I just don't know. Like Jam Miller just doesn't feel like a top tier SEC running back. And I think the preseason all SEC rankings are probably indicative of that. And you just don't know what to get out of Richard Young and Daniel Hill because they weren't really healthy last year. And, Jerry Washington seems to have had a good start to fall camp, but where does he fit into the mix? So just good, but like not wowing, not great. There's just something off. There's something missing with what we're used to out of that room at Alabama. So in the context of the SEC and of the high level elite college football programs, I would call them a mediocre running back room.
I was going to use the word mid, but you've already sort of taken that. So I'll take
the hipper version of mediocre.
Yeah, I'm going to take a made up word, but one that Nick Saban would appreciate.
We've got Deneau and I from out so
just
far.
Like everything Mike's saying is right. Like Jam Miller's a solid running back. He really is. He's not bad. Like he does the little things really well. He's tough. He's clearly a leader on this team, given how they put him out like they do to talk to us in the media every chance they get. But at the end of the day, his numbers are his numbers. And the running back room, if you want to say Jalen Milroe took away snaps, that is absolutely true. You know who didn't complain about that when I talked to him? Robert Gillespie. Said it had nothing to do with it. They, as much as they were running the option, they weren't really running a read option because that's not what Jalen did. Jalen was either running or passing. There wasn't a whole lot in between. So the running backs knew when they were getting the football. If you take away the total accumulation of numbers because there weren't enough opportunities, you say it's not fair to say they rushed for 900 yards in total compared to the rest of the SEC. You look at the advanced numbers, yards per carry, yards per first down, yards per touchdown or carries per touchdown, aggressively average. And that's not like Mike can talk about Jeremiah Love and all that stuff. Just look at the wall that they go into when they're in the running back room. It is, to your point, Derrick Henry, the best running back we've seen in college in God knows how long. It's, TJ Yeldon. It's all these guys. It's Alvin Kamara. How many guys? This is what the program was made off of. And it's just fallen off. And it's been 2 years of this, really. And I would argue
longer.
As good as Jahmyr Gibbs was, and he was really good and really explosive, the style of running they had that year was not Alabama football. It was not between the tackles, picking up 3-4 yards on first down, converting inside the red zone. Wasn't really happening. So they got to get back to that. And subtracting Jalen Milroe could help. Don't get me wrong, it could help because you kind of know what you're doing a little bit more. But at the end of the day, the talent level of that room needs to improve. And yes, Jam Miller could do a Brian Robinson senior year and just shock us all. But that's more the exception than it is the rule.
It never felt all that great from Brian Robinson, And
Brian Robinson, he was tough as shit.
He was, but it wasn't wasn't overwhelming. It was just kind of he was there, like he wasn't
He hit you in the mouth.
explosive guy. And yeah, they had to go out and get Gibbs because Jace McClellan wasn't good enough. Roydell Williams wasn't good enough. They went and recruited Kamar Wheaton, who just kind of disappeared. And now, yeah, maybe it turns around. AKD or Edra Crow coming in, like maybe it turns around in another year, but we'll see. And just again, for the record, I checked IT. It is, in fact, in the Scrabble UK dictionary, but not the US version.
The UK? I want to know how they define it there.
I don't know.
I can't even say I with a British accent, and nobody wants to hear that anyways.
Wow.
Obviously, running backs, they've got to make the plays, but I think, offensive line is, could have something to do with that as well. I think that's kind of the perfect segue into the offensive line position. And, you could argue that it sounds crazy because they've had draft picks, but you could argue that line hasn't looked the way it probably should have the last couple of years as well. So Alex, we'll just go with you, kind of the offensive line. Obviously, that's probably, if not quarterback, that's the biggest talker right now.
Yeah, potential is the word that comes to mind. And the outside world sounds potential, and they go, "Ooh, that's great. This could be the best offensive line on paper." You know who hates the word potential? Coaches. They hate it because unrealized potential means nothing. So I think that's the challenge to this offensive line. I think there are two spots on this offensive line where you know pretty much what you're going to get. Parker Brailsford, Caden Proctor. That's it. And Caden Proctor, we haven't seen consistently the high end of what he can do. We saw it against Auburn. We saw it against Georgia, where he just looks like a beast. But there are weeks where it doesn't show up. Jaden Roberts can look great. Then he falls down. And then he's not playing for a few series. And injuries happen. And you don't want to blame a guy, but if you don't have availability, you don't have much ability. What will the guard spot be? The other guard spot could be Jaden Roberts, maybe not, with Cam Dewberry and Geno Vandermark. I love the fact that you're talking about two really good players competing. Like, I feel really good about either one of those guys starting at this point. But you don't know, and you don't know what Wilkin Formby is going to be. I really like what Wilkin Formby's had to say about his offseason and what he learned from last year and the way he's really rebuilt his body. He talked to Ryan Grubb, and he talks about the physicality he's playing with, something that was definitely missing a year ago. So all the potential is there for this to be the best offensive line in the SEC. No doubt in my mind. But that was the case last year too, and it didn't happen. So potential is the word, but you can take that any way you want to take it because it's good or it has the potential to be disappointing too.
I get it. See, I'm going to use the word promising, another P word with similar connotation. Because, Caden Proctor is the walking definition of potential and could very well be a first-team All-American, top 10 NFL draft pick after this year. Like, every single thing is on the table for him, but it's been on the table and hasn't always materialized. Parker Brailsford could be a Remington Trophy winner. Best center in the country, could very well be second-round pick. You don't see very many centers going into first, but has all the potential, all the promise of being the first center off the board in this upcoming draft. So that's two pretty big names right there. Jaden Roberts, I think, is still in the potential category because of his athletic potential, his promise. He also is a guy that, with a good season, could be a day 2 NFL draft pick. Wilkin Formby, promise of being a better player than last year, but Elijah Pritchett was also ahead of him. And if Wilkin Formby was ready by the end of last year, you'd think he'd be playing ahead of Pritchett. I don't think he did until Pritchett left. If I have the timeline right around the bowl game there. And then, left guard, I think you have potential. Cam Dewberry is a big dude. If he starts, that's a lot of potential and promise there. Geno Vandermark as, I think, a very solid player too. So you go right down the list. Like, if it all clicks, Joe Moore, like that's probably where that offensive line is heading. But you can also see the scenarios where things don't work out at particular spots and they're struggling with injuries, or the right tackle is an issue again, and you can see kind of the downside of it. But
the downside is worrisome, especially if you're talking about injuries, because they're thin at tackle.
Yes.
And they don't. The backup center is Geno Vandermark.
Right.
I mean, that's their. So you're talking about playing a lot of freshmen. You're talking about playing guys like Ola Salonen, who
Right.
your was playing guard. Maybe he's a tackle now. Maybe he's both. It's
I'd
just,
say tackle.
yeah.
I think if you have a tackle go down, it's Olas. I think the Michael Carroll, I don't want to say hype, but like the promise of Michael Carroll is a year off. Like, I don't see him being much of a thing this year, just based on what we've seen so far. Just doesn't seem like it's going to be right there right away.
Yeah, that's fair.
He's going to be good, though. Oh my God, he's going to be good.
Right. I don't see it this year.
Yeah, and
I think
Jackson Lloyd is another one where it's like, just give that guy time, and they're going to be fine.
Jackson Lloyd's
there's just a big gap. There's all these guys who are seniors, and there's all these guys who are freshmen, and there's just not a lot in between.
Yeah, that was kind of I think Cap's kind of just like, let me get to year 2 and 3 of Lloyd and Carroll as my tackle and guard on the left side. Like they want him there. We'll kind of move, I guess. This is another one that, you look at this roster, it's like, yeah, it's loaded, but then you look at it, it's like, how is it going to work out? And tight end is dunno again, aside from Josh Cuevas. I mean, they had one guy catching balls from Jay Lindsey in the spring, and they're supposed to have everybody back. They get 4 new faces, and now there's still guys dealing with injuries, so it seems like that hasn't really cleared up at all. Marshall Pritchett looks like he's running with the ones I think I saw. Alex, we'll start with you.
Fine. I mean,
that might be nice.
Yeah, Cuevas is a good player. I'm assuming Cuevas is going to be healthy. I like what he can do. I'm saying fine within the context of that. I don't think they're going to do as much 2 tight ends as a year ago. I just don't think it's going to work out where those guys are blocking at the level they want them to be, whether that's Marshall Pritchett, just a young guy, probably going to take him some time, or Jackson Marco, Brody Dalton, Danny Lewis still coming back from an injury. You've got numbers, which is good, which is why I don't say it's bad, which would be a lazy word to use. But it's fine because you've got a guy at the top who I have some trust in, but you just don't have a lot of guys behind him. Like, maybe I think people should pump their brakes on Caleb Edwards. He's got in the program like 2 minutes ago. Maybe he'll be a player one day. But, again, there's that gap between a whole lot of seasoned guys who haven't done a whole lot and these young guys who people are really excited about, and especially at a physical position like tight end, which is what they're going to ask those guys to do. They're not wide receivers masquerading as tight ends. It's really hard in the SEC, man, and it's going to be difficult. And I think that's why ultimately I think you're going to see more Cuevas than anything. And if you see a second tight end, it's not going to be the level we saw Robbie Woods a year ago.
I think unsettled is the word that comes to mind, because you can name 5 or 6 guys out of that list, and you're not quite sure how you're going to stack them. Mm-hmm. Obviously, we think Cuevas is your number 1, but even then, like, that's an elevation for him from where he was last year. And that's a player a couple years ago was at Cal Poly and was kind of a 0-star recruit, and went to Washington and didn't really do a whole lot of Washington, and then came to Alabama and had a couple plays here and there. I mean, he had the touchdown against Wisconsin that comes to mind, but calling him like a upper half of the SEC starter at tight end, I think that's a stretch right now.
Yeah.
So you're not really sure about him still, and that's his 5th year. It's his last year. You don't know what you're getting out of Brody Dalton and Jackson Marco in the SEC. It's just a complete unknown right now. You don't know about Danny Lewis because you haven't ever known about Danny Lewis. You don't know about Marshall Pritchett. You don't really know about Jay Lindsey. You don't know about Caleb Edwards. Just put those names in a hat, and you're trying to figure out what you're getting out of that position, and it's hard. And you mentioned it, but I don't think you're going to get what you got from Robbie Woods, which was quietly very good the last couple of years.
In a lot of different ways on the football.
Right. Just a really tough mother effer who would stick his nose in there every single play, and just had that way about him. And CJ Dupree, like, a little bit different style, but like tough, dependable player. So that's tough to find, especially among younger players who are just kind of being thrown into the SEC. Like, hey, go to Georgia in a few weeks and go up against a dude who's going to be a 1st-round pick next year and go block him. Like, that's tough. Yeah. So I don't know. We'll see.
Maybe I say fine and not. I'm not more pessimistic because it's not. If it was Georgia, and they've had Brock Bowers and Oscar Delp and all these guys and be like, it's not looking great. But Alabama's got this weird thing where they don't have stars at tight end. The whole game has evolved as it relates to tight end. Alabama has not found that guy who can be your playmaker offensively. Been little fits and starts. O.J. Howard could have been that guy, never really was, didn't get integrated into the offense. It's one of the weirder sub-storylines of the last 10 years as that position is really transformed, is that Alabama just hasn't hit on a guy.
And the latest example of that is, not to cut you off, Mike, but it's kind of Caleb Odom. I know they kind of always wanted him, kind of viewed him as a receiver. That's what I was always told, like from the jump. But that one's weird, and that was just a weird one. And if he goes and he has 500 yards, 400 yards, it would be like not surprising me. It's just odd, certainly at that position.
Yeah, I mean, people thought he was going to play tight end and be that different tight end who could stretch the field. People thought that about Julio Billingsley. People thought that about Amari Niblack.
I still like kind of like Niblack, but as crazy that sounds.
Right. And there's just other things going on with at least two of those guys that I think kind of prevented them from reaching their potential. But
other things.
Yeah. Right. It just sometimes it just reverts to like you want the guy out there that you can trust and can just do the right thing. And that's where Robbie Utes just boom, go hit somebody. Instead of just go run a 25-yard out, once a game and we'll try to hit you on it. Like the more impactful way to play tight end, I think, is the way Utes did. And he played in the NFL last night.
Horton joked that he was going to play tight end.
I don't know if you guys watched last night, but he was mentioned like 100 times at the start of the Seahawks broadcast. He had an out, like design run for him, like multiple blocks. It was like insane what I was watching.
Your catch.
Yeah. Moving right along, sticking with the pass catchers, wide receiver. Mike.
Stacked. It's one of those words, like there should be a thesaurus as sports writers for like how we're describing positions. I guess that's what we're doing right now. But like stacked is one of those that always comes up when you
loaded.
Loaded when a room is really deep. And it is. I mean, the room is impressive with the way that Rico Scott's come along and everything they've said about him, with bringing Isaiah Horton in, with still having Ryan Williams and Jeremy Bernard. And then you kind of have the wild card and Jalen Hale. What can he show? You have Cole Adams, who's Mr. Reliable and brings that different dimension as a slot receiver. You have Jalen Mbakwe, who's a really exciting prospect recruit that still don't know what you're going to get out of him this year. So stacked, loaded. Like you have Derek Meadows, who's a big guy. You have Latsier Brooks, who's this 5'9" guy who can be explosive. Like you check every single little box, and you have experience, you have youth, you have everything. The room's fine. Not fine, but it's better than
ditto. I mean, it's stacked. It's the best word. Loaded. You already used that word. I'm not going to try to come up with a better one because there really isn't. Do I have questions about how all the pieces fit together? Yeah. Do I have questions about what Ryan Williams does for an encore? Heck yeah, because he hit a wall the second half of last season. And he's got to show that he can kind of burst through that and be that guy that we saw against, maybe not against Georgia, because that was just an insane game.
Wisconsin, Western Kentucky.
Yeah. He was just different. And can you recapture that? I don't think that part of his game has gone away. I'm not really worried about it, but he's got to show it. Love Jeremy Bernard. Excited to see Isaiah Horton. And then just how that fourth and fifth guy, and whether the speed and promise of Rico Scott and the way he's really come on this offseason to where we weren't talking about him a lot last year at all. And suddenly he's just a guy where it's like wide receiver forward to Rico. Done. Running 23.5 miles an hour. But as I said on our board, when somebody asked, is that the same speed as Tyreek Hill? Yeah, but Tyreek does it in a game. Ryan Williams runs 23 miles per hour in a game. Can he convert that speed to game speed and be a guy who gives them the kind of depth that starts to mimic what you saw at Washington, where they had those three guys at the top that went in the first, second, and third round, and then the fourth guy was Jeremy Bernard catching 30-something passes. If you can recreate that, man, this offense could be really special. You need a quarterback to facilitate it. You need a running game that can balance it out. You need an offensive line that can hold up, but, man, the pieces are there for sure.
Yeah, I wrote down speed for that position as well. Flipping over, we'll just go to DBs. I think, you Alabama fans look at kind of the, I guess, glory days. Like it really was iron sharpens iron, like these first round draft picks. It looks like it's kind of getting back to that with, those corners in the room. I mean, just loaded, stacked is probably the right word for the corners. We'll group the corners and the safeties together. So we'll just do defensive backs. Alex, we'll start with you.
Yeah, I mean, it's a synonym for the word. I'm just depth. Depth is the word that comes to mind, where you think about it like in terms of hockey, where you have a first and a second line, and your second line's really good. And you think about where they were a year ago, where, again, literally everyone was new or playing a new position. Everyone. Malachi Moore, the only guy coming back in the start as a starter, was playing a different position that year. It's completely different now, where you got Damani Jackson and Xavier Brown, who I think are two of the best cornerbacks in the SEC. I think people really underrate Xavier Brown. Keon Sabb's a playmaker. Bray Hubbard is a guy who showed a lot back half of the season, stepping in for Sabb and played at a really high level. And then you've got that second line behind him, where Cam Calhoun is a really good player coming over from Utah. Dijon Lee, Chuck McDonald, Zay Mincy. Like, the list just goes on and on. They can just throw so many bodies at you, to where I look at it like a really good problem that came back in Maurice Linguist and Jason Jones. Have to figure out who's our best lineup and how does that change week to week, whether you're playing Georgia, that's going to go more pro style and try to be more physical, or whether you go play Tennessee or whoever it is that might do something a little bit differently. How do you mix and match the Husky position with Deshaun Jones and with Drake Kirkpatrick, and maybe another guy gets in there? It's just, again, I've used the analogy before, but it feels like that scene in Beautiful Mind, where it's just like all these things flying. Like, where do you put it all together? How does it fit? But it's a good problem to have, because it's loaded, it's stacked, it's deep, it's depth, it's whatever word you want to use.
Settled is the word that comes to mind. Whereas unsettled, I think, would have been the word I would have used last year. Yeah. I will say, let's not forget about Malachi Moore, because Malachi Moore, not only just spiritually and like in the locker room, etc., he's a pretty good player too. I don't know if he ever became exactly what we thought he could be, but he's a 4th round NFL draft pick. He was a good player for Alabama last year, and we don't want to just gloss over that loss. And they were younger last year. Obviously, once Sabb went down, they were a little bit thinner, but I think you still felt decent about the depth at corner last year when you had Damani and Xavier, and then behind them was Deshaun Jones and Jalen Mbakwe. And now it's Cam Calhoun and Dijon Lee. Like, is that better? Yes, probably, but I don't know if it was as bad last year, or at least by the end of last year, as we might initially think. Now, I think safety, yes. Like, I think Bray Hubbard's come a long ways. I think Ivan Taylor seems to have come in as a freshman and performed pretty well. Keon Sabb, when healthy, is probably one of the better safeties in the SEC, if not college football. And, Zay Mincy's still kind of the unknown, but very talented player. So
looked really good in the bowl game.
Right. The safety position, I think, is certainly deeper. And again, you are trying to replace Malachi Moore. Let's not forget that. Your Husky position, you go from Devontae Smith, who was kind of reliable, steady player last year. I don't know if he was ever a huge liability. I don't think he was ever really like a strength of the team. But you lose him, and then you go from that to Deshaun Jones, which I think is still a little bit of a question mark, the Husky position, how that all looks. You're not vintage Minkah Fitzpatrick in the slot. Like, I think you're trying to fill with a more of a steady veteran.
How they went from like Minkah to Caleb in like a short period of time is insane.
Right.
Like, those guys don't grow on trees.
Even Brian Branch was a really good
Brian Branch, another in between Caleb down. Yeah. It's crazy.
Right.
That Nick Saban knew what he was doing.
I know this isn't a recruiting show, but Jair Edwards is another one that would probably be in that similar time frame.
Yeah, you just keep bringing in guys, and they got Jordan Edmonds coming in next year too. So, I do think it's probably better. I do think it's probably a little bit deeper. I don't know. I think when the night and day comparisons come into play, it's probably more going back to last spring, when you're like, we have no idea what the hell is going on right now at this position. I think by the end of last year, people felt pretty good about that secondary.
Yeah.
So going from that to where we are now, I don't think is as drastic of a change, but the despite the loss of Malachi Moore and despite the loss of Devontae Smith, I think you've still you've put yourself in a pretty good position to be very good this year.
Yeah, I put rotations question mark for mine just because, I mean, we've seen Alabama fans have seen kind of Kane Walmix kind of just put it in. It wasn't it seemed kind of random at some points, like who he was putting in at certain points. And like you mentioned, Chuck McDonald, I think he's worth credit because he could very well see the field in an important spot. I mean, Red Morgan's playing corner now. I mean, it's going to be interesting to see how they rotate all those guys. And like you said, Zay Mincy is a guy that, I mean, you talk about all the within the program and people around them. It's like, how are you going to keep Zay Mincy and Ivan Taylor off the field? But Sav and Hubbard are arguably
another year, at least,
one of the best duos in the SEC. So it's a good problem to have, like Alex said.
Yeah, and I think if they end up being what I think they can be, one of the more underrated factors in all of this is another year in the system, because their style of coverages did change quite a bit from Nick Saban to King Womack, where Nick played a lot of man-to-man and pattern matching, and it was, as opposed to what they're doing, what they want to do, which is a vision style of defense, and read and react on the football, and where you can create more turnovers theoretically that way. I think what they wanted to do last year versus what they were able to do, there was a pretty big gap there. And I think that probably was part of rotating those guys heavily, was figuring out who can do it and who can't. Another year in the system, can it sort of click? They were really good with turnovers, though, last year. And I don't know if you can expect to duplicate that, but I do think another year in that system and that style of coverage could benefit some guys.
Yeah, they can't do what happened in the fourth quarter of the Georgia game. They can't do what happened on fourth down against Vandy. They can't do what happened when South Carolina had a receiver wide open towards the end of the first half. That can't happen. But that stuff didn't really happen towards the end of last season, even with Garrett Nussmeier and Peyton Thorne and those games. Like, they shut those guys down. Even with Peyton Thorne. Yeah, you heard those words.
Thorne in the same sentence.
Well, he was better than whatever Missouri was throwing out there. Drew Pine, guys just chucking up interceptions, and Gaston Moore chucking up a pick to Malachi Moore.
Gaston to you.
Gaston Moore just transferred.
Just to kind of put a final bow on the
South Florida. Sorry, Gaston Moore to South Florida. That's a very important part of our show.
Put a final bow on the defensive backs, like Alex. Yeah, to your point, like that's a big thing I talk to with recruits too. Like in the secondary, it's like we can play multiple positions. It's like kind of just open field. So it's certainly like you said. I guess we'll just go down a level to the linebackers, which I put old, like not in like a good way.
Damn, that's exactly what I was gonna say.
Oh shit.
I was gonna say old in an endearing way.
Go ahead, Mike. Go ahead, Mike.
So, hey, great minds think alike. I was gonna say experience, but I felt like old is actually
in the most positive way possible.
Right. And that's like, I was talking to Justin Jefferson the other day, and he said they make fun of Nikai Hill-Green for being a grandpa, and they bend over with their cane. I mean, it's historically, like, you don't very often get 6-year players in college football. It kind of takes the COVID year to help do that. And you have two of them in Jamarian Latham, who's at the Wolf, and then Nikai Hill-Green, who's at inside linebacker. And then on top of that, you have 2 5th-year players with Deontay Lawson and Justin Jefferson. And on top of that, you have Quay Russa, who's a junior, a 3rd-year player. So it's about as old of a linebacker room as you're going to find. And that's a good thing, because the alternative would have been Jefferson not coming back and Lawson not coming back and Latham not coming back. And you're really digging into some younger players at that point. So old is the word. And obviously the player with the most potential is Russa. And if he has a great year, I think it could be a pretty high round NFL draft pick next year. But even then, you're talking about, I think, at least a solid NFL draft pick in Deontay Lawson, and then 3 guys in Latham and Nikai Hill-Green and Jefferson who'll probably get some sort of look from NFL teams next spring.
Old is the right word. I'm not going to come up with another word, but not to be the pessimistic guy, but like, enjoy it while you can, because this was supposed to be the rebuilding year, especially at inside linebacker. And in a way, they lucked out. In one instance for Deontay, unfortunate for him with that injury, you get him back when you don't expect to. You get Justin Jefferson back when you didn't expect to. So they got to put the rebuild off for another year. And then you lose Okoronkwo, and enjoy it while you can, because next year might be there might be some bumps in the road, and it might change a little bit. Quay Maybe he blows up to the point that he's gone after this year. I think he'd be a really good player. Maybe he's back, but like this is a pleasant surprise on the roster, but it's 1 year, so hopefully they can make the most of it.
Yeah, and I think I was going to bring that up while you were talking. Similar kind of the offensive line, and correct me if I'm wrong, it's kind of the old guys and then kind of a little bit of a gap. And then Alabama's got quite a few, I mean, they took 4. The whole joke was they're going to take 11 linebackers last year in the class. I mean, they took 4 guys. They're taking a couple more this class. So, yeah, big kind of gap. And you're definitely right. I had that same thought. Take another step further down to the defensive line, which I know is always a big talking point for Alabama fans. Alex?
Disruptive question mark? Like, can you be?
Check Scrabble on that one.
Yeah, I don't know. It's just like a maybe LT Overton can close that gap because again, statistically, 39 pressures, 2 sacks. Like, how does that even happen? But who else is going to get to the quarterback? Can James Smith do it? Can Tim Keenan do it? Can Edric Hill do it? Can Jeremiah Beeman do it? Somebody's got to be that guy up front because it's like James Smith talked about. Oh yeah, I studied Quentin Williams. It's a great person to study, play interior defensive line at Alabama or anywhere. That's the last guy they've had that has really consistently been a game wrecker up front. And you talk about what Alabama was made on. It's that. It's Deron Payne. It's all the way back to Terrence Cody. I know he didn't get to the quarterback a lot, but they had difference makers on the interior of the defensive line. Jonathan Allen. They need to get back to that, and you need more than just LT. And so, how are they going to get to that? I'm not 100% sure. I like again where James Smith could be. I like Jeremiah Beeman and how quickly he's come on, but they've got to be more disruptive at front because this thing where Kane Womack has to be creative and throw blitzes and bring numbers from different positions. It's fun. It's great. He gets to be really creative, but it puts you in a precarious situation on the back end of the defense, even though you've got a really good secondary. So ideally, you got guys who can win one-on-ones. And to this point, based on what we saw last year, not a lot of guys have done that on a consistent enough basis. Can they get that? I think that's the difference. Again, good defense, the floor for this defense is really high. But to be great, to be elite, to be one of the best in the country, you're going to have to get disruptors up front.
The word that comes to mind for me is lucky. And I don't mean that to describe the players themselves. I mean to describe Alabama.
Yeah.
Because getting LT Overton and Tim Keenan back for their last years, when both of them could have come out for the draft last year, I think it was plausible that either one of them could have come out, is massive because you're talking about not having Keenan, as even Kane Womack said the other day, like it's huge that he came back. It's hard to find those guys in the portal. And if you're finding a starting caliber SEC defensive tackle, you're paying way up the rear end to find one. Same thing for an edge rusher, and especially an edge rusher that fits the bend position for Alabama, which is a little bit bigger than your typical edge rusher. He needs to be a dude who's 275-ish. So Overton just fits that mold right. Keenan fits the mold right. And if they both have really good years, they're both potential first-round picks. They're in that category. And if you didn't have them, you're talking about Jordan Renaud, Jeremiah Beeman, James Smith as your starting defensive line. And then you're really like, ooh.
You're not going to throw Keon Keeley in that mix?
Keon Keeley.
Steve.
Yeah, even then, you're talking about Keon Keeley as a starter after his first 3 years.
Steve.
Or first 2 years, whatever it's been. And that's just – that would be a whole different story. Like, you're going through this year talking about, like, can Vandy run on them against that defensive line? I mean, they might – Vandy did last year against this defensive line. It might happen again, Oklahoma. But you're really, really in a tough spot because you just don't have those guys coming up through the pipeline like Isaiah Vega. And, I mean, Beeman is coming along. I don't know, like, first year as a starter in the SEC, what would that look like? Edric Hill, Keeley, Renaud, like, that's a lot to put on those guys. So getting Overton and Keenan back was huge. And Alabama, quite frankly, is lucky that it happened.
Yeah. Real quick, special teams. We got to include it.
Precarious.
Precarious is the right way.
I know we've talked about it a bunch, so we can keep going.
I just don't know. It's everything's new. All the specialists are new. You don't know what you're going to get. It's comforting if you want to look at it that way. that they put Connor Talty out there to talk to us on media day, said all the right things. It's a good sign for where he's at. They sound confident in him. None of that matters until he gets to Tallahassee. None of that matters. You got to see him do it. You got to see all those guys do it. And it's not just the specialists, it's the protectors. It's all these little things. And maybe they can be more elite is a weird phrase. In terms of the return game and creating more momentum plays on special teams, because they didn't do that a lot last year. But yeah, precarious. You got to like both sides of the ball, but there's that special teams where it's like, hope everything shakes out right.
Yeah, I mean, combustible, flammable, volatile, like nuclear. I don't know, like what's the right word to describe that position or those positions?
Ramping it up, like
it just means more.
Just atomic. I just look. I mean,
apocalyptic.
There was times the last couple years where you're like, James Burnham's the best player in the field, and before that, Will Reichert's the best player in the field. Like because they were so good and so steady.
Yeah.
And Nealon Hibbett was very steady as a long snapper. And the last like big special teams mistake that's not involving a returner, because I think back to Kool-Aid a couple of years ago, you probably have to go back to like the Iron Bowl when there was the Paul Tyson bad hold and that went wrong. It was 2021, I think. And then Burnham became the holder after that. So just the reliability of that operation is a pretty key thing. And might be worth mentioning that Alabama plays at Auburn this year, and just Alabama fans do not need another special teams miscue on their souls that happens at Auburn. Like they don't need that. They don't need to happen in Georgia or Florida State or any of the other places they play too. So you just don't know. I think they feel really good about Talty compared to last year at kicker. You don't know until it lines up. And then the punter position, I think, is one of the biggest question marks on this roster because you just don't know at all what you have there. And until you see it, bad shank in a bad situation is a bad situation. So,
and just to underline it, like people hate on Jalen Miller all they want. I'm tired of litigating that. He was a cheat code when it came to fourth down and red zone.
Yep.
He made everything work perfectly because of his running ability. Taking that out of the equation, you are going to need more from special teams this year. So just watch it.
Yeah. There is our position by position, one word, keeping it to one word breakdown. Again, there'll be a Saturday scrimmage. We'll wrap it up real quick with just one player that you kind of want to learn more about or think could pop or, create some more buzz coming out of Saturday. Mike?
I don't know if he'll pop, but the player that still intrigues me a lot is Austin Mack, because he stayed here for a reason. And when he could have left in the spring after Keelan Russell came in, and I'm still trying to figure out what that exact reason is, because this is his chance. Like if he's not going to overtake Ty Simpson right now, then the clock is ticking for Keelan Russell to become Alabama's starter. And then I don't think you're going to be overtaking Keelan Russell unless you think you can hold him off next year if Ty's gone. So this is a time to make his move. Like you talk about the whole year, you're not going to play probably during a game, a real regular season game. The scrimmage is the time to make your move. Like this is live football and you have a chance to go out there and play with the ones. Like that's not an opportunity you get very often during a real actual regular season game. So very, very key moment for him. At the end of the day, I still think he's more than likely going to be playing somewhere else in 2026. But if there's a chance for him to make a move, and theoretically this quarterback competition is still open, it has to be like right now, right now.
Yes. You might be clipped and put up in the facility again for this one, which would be great for us.
I mean, Nick Sheridan, give him some motivation for his
and real quick to your point, I know we're running long here, but like, is there something to be said that Mac was Grubb's guy and Keelan is kind of Sheridan's guy? And how is that, if they do need to turn, if they start with Ty and they need to turn, how does that factor in? I mean, I know they're all best friends and it works perfectly together, but
Right. No, it's a good point because there's a lot of voices in that room and a lot of guys who've come from different places, so to speak. But I will say Ryan Grubb's probably pragmatic enough that he can become a Keelan Russell guy.
No, yeah, you're
You
right.
see that, you're like, yeah, I'm a Keelan Russell guy now.
He's practically said that without saying it. I mean,
Right.
in the summer.
The most underrated part of any quarterback competition is not the coach and not the quarterback. It's who the players, the rest of the team likes. It's who the receivers like. And I think Nick Saban said it best when he said it often. It's who wins the team, who wins the locker room. Who does Ryan Williams like? I think who does Jeremy Bernard like? Who does Isaiah Ward? Where's the connection there?
Yeah.
Because ultimately, I think that's what matters. I'm going to cheat, and I'm going to pick 2 players just because the Jaden Roberts thing, you got to keep watching that. And whether you lit a fire under his ass for a week, does he respond to that and play like we know he's capable of playing and kind of re-solidify that he's the guy at right guard? The other guy, I won't say Noah Carter again because he's on the round table already. I think people forget he's on the team, and I think he's going to be a good player.
Mm-hmm.
What's Yanze's Pierre status on this team? I don't know. You look at the rotations, and he's at the back of the line. Then you hear Kane Womack talk about him, and you say he's a guy who's really starting to turn the corner. Is it because he's a situational player, and you're going to use him primarily as like a third down rusher? You think he'd be a difference maker there? Maybe that's an overly optimistic way of looking at it. I'm very curious because there are so many guys at that Wolf position. And Yanze, who at this point in his career should be taking that next step, will he do it? And a scrimmage is a good place to show, hey, I can go get to the quarterback. So
yeah,
he's one I think worth watching.
I think if Noah Carter and Justin Hill are consistently ahead of Yanze, then Yanze is Gonze.
Yeah.
Wanted to show on that.
I will click the outro in just a second. Thanks, guys, for joining us. Again, we're recording on a Friday morning. This will be out pretty soon after that on the Friday ahead of Saturday's scrimmage. Again, it's kind of under lock and key, seemingly, the scrimmage, but we're going to continue to dig, and we'll have some info coming week, and we'll be back probably early next week. Thank you, guys.